Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, please hit subscribe. I post new videos every Saturday. So today I'm going to be talking about my secondary infertility story, and I just want to throw out there that I am in no way trying to compare myself to anyone else. I know that a lot of people have it a lot harder than I did, and my heart really goes out to those people. And this doesn't happen to everybody, but this is just my story. So if you don't know what secondary infertility is, it's basically when you can conceive one baby or maybe even multiple, and then after that, you just, for some reason, start having issues. So when I tried to get pregnant with my first son, Liam, I had absolutely no issues. We got pregnant on the very first try, and I didn't realize how lucky I was that that was the case. So after he was born July 2017, and around October, my first period came back, and so I was about 3 months postpartum, and it seemed to be fairly regular. I got it in October, November, and December. I really wanted my kids to be very close in age, and so by January, he was about 6 months old, and I was ready to start trying again. I talked to Roger, and he was ready to start trying again. And so January 2018, we started trying, and I took pregnancy test, and it was negative. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it's too soon. And so I waited, and I took more, and my period never came. The test kept coming back negative. I was really confused. I didn't really know what was going on. And so we kept trying, and I just kept taking test after test after test, negative after negative after negative. And so I'm like, okay, so there's something going on here. I started thinking about like a cryptic pregnancy maybe, where it just doesn't show up on the test, but you're actually pregnant. Because at this point, I didn't really do that much research. I didn't realize that people can have trouble getting pregnant. It never really occurred to me. So probably after at least 100 pregnancy tests, my period finally returned in April. So that's 3 months of no period and 3 months of me freaking out. What's wrong with me? Why is my period not showing up all of a sudden? Like, how am I not pregnant yet? I'm just freaking out. At this point, I kind of turned to YouTube and I started watching a lot of videos about other girls who were going through something kind of similar. And I was just kind of trying to research, figuring out what the heck is going on. And so again, we kept trying. I kept getting negative pregnancy tests. I have taken probably hundreds at this point. I got the cheap Amazon ones that come with like 50 ovulation tests and like 20 pregnancy tests. So I was just taking those like crazy, and it just nothing. I would get a positive ovulation test, and then I wouldn't ovulate, obviously, because my period never came and the pregnancy tests were still negative. And so at this point, I was just getting so frustrated and just so confused, depressed, and I felt like nobody understood like what I was going through. Everyone else was getting their period, everyone else was getting pregnant when they wanted to. I just felt so alone, and I felt like no one really understood, except for the other girls that were on YouTube that I would watch who were also struggling, which helped me through a lot. So in July, here we are again, 3 months later, I got my period again, and I decided to just contact my doctor and see if maybe there was something wrong with me. So I made an appointment with her. She did some blood work. She thought maybe I have PCOS. I did all those tests, and everything came back normal. My thyroid was fine. Like, everything was in normal range. There was no reason for my body to be out of whack. But yeah, everything came back normal. And so she did recommend for me to see an OB who would maybe have more tests to do and maybe have something else that they could do to help me. And so she put a referral in for that, and it took about a month for me to be able to get into my appointment with that. And so while I was waiting, she recommended for me to get on a round of birth control. She said sometimes when you get on birth control, it kind of like changes up your hormones, and when you get off, you get pregnant right away. So I'm like, okay, I'll try anything right now because I just need to be regular. How am I gonna get pregnant if I'm not even getting a period? Like, it's so frustrating. I feel like all of these months of me not having a period are just being wasted. And so I got on the birth control for about a month. It did nothing. It just kind of made my hormones go crazy, and I felt like a psycho. I was just way more emotional, and I was upset because I felt like being on birth control was counterintuitive, and now I'm like, how am I supposed to get pregnant if I'm on birth control? And it just kind of added to my depression. So now we're in August, and I'm able to get into the OB, and he reviews all my blood work that my doctor did. Says these are the exact same tests I would have done. Everything looks normal. You're young. It's only been 6 months of you trying. I'm gonna have you just keep trying again for an entire year. After that year mark, if you're still not pregnant, come back and see me. And so I agreed. I said, okay, I'll keep trying. And so I went back to YouTube. I went back to just researching everything that I could possibly do to help regulate my cycles because nothing was working. So there was this stuff I found online. I watched a YouTube video and this girl was talking about it. She says it helped her regulate, helped her get pregnant, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to try this. And so it's called the Bee Balm and Ash. It's an essential oil. It's for adult fertility. So you apply it to your lower abdomen 2 times a day. And I did this religiously. And it really worked when it came to regulating my cycle. I don't think it helped me get pregnant at all. I used it for quite a long time and I didn't get pregnant during that time. But since I started using it, the first cycle I used it, my period was still fairly long. But continuously using it, I was pretty regular. Within like 2 or 3 cycles, my cycles became normal. And so honestly, I can't recommend this stuff for getting you pregnant, but I can recommend this stuff for regulating your cycle because for me, it really did work. And so I'm going to go put a link in my description bar if I can find it. It was from an Etsy shop, and so I'm going to try to find it, but this stuff really did help me get more regular. I'm also going to put a link in my description bar for the like ovulation test and the pregnancy test that I was using, because honestly, if you're buying like first response pregnancy test and the clear blue ovulation test and you're going through infertility of any sort, you're spending so much money. And so it's so much cheaper to do it this way. You don't feel as guilty about testing constantly, because if you're anything like me, you're testing like 5 times a day and it can really add up. And this is by far the cheapest way to go. So now we're in February 2019 and it has passed that 1 year mark of me not being able to get pregnant. And so I went back to my doctor and I asked him if he can put me on Clomid, because that was a fertility drug that I saw a lot of girls on YouTube were taking and a lot of them had success. So I really wanted to try it. I had never taken anything like this before, so I had no idea how my body would react to it, but I really wanted to get pregnant, so I tried anything. So he did agree to giving me the Clomid, but he thought, you know, it's a year, you're still young. My partner, Roger, he is a little bit older, so he did want to do a semen analysis just to make sure maybe he's the problem and I'm not the problem. He didn't really want to give me medication if I'm not the problem. And so we did that. We had to go to a different kind of like fertility clinic, have him get that done, and everything came back normal. His results were totally fine, and so he was totally fine with prescribing me the Clomid. I knew he wasn't the problem. I knew it was me because obviously I'm having all this trouble with my cycle. And so I take my first round of Clomid and it didn't even trigger ovulation for me. I couldn't get like a blazing positive ovulation test. Like they were getting dark, but it wasn't like anything like, oh, this is definitely positive. And then my cycle was actually longer that month than it had been when using I was still using the essential oil, but I feel like that cycle was maybe like 5 or 6 days longer than it had been. And so the Clomid didn't do anything for me that cycle. So after that round of Clomid, I kind of didn't take any more medication for a little bit. And then in April, he had me do an HSG test, which is basically where they insert a catheter into your vagina and insert a dye. So the dye flows through your fallopian tubes and it can kind of see if there's any blockages. And when he said that to me, I was kind of thinking, you know, maybe I have scar tissue from my C-section. Maybe that's what's causing this. Maybe that's why I can't get pregnant. And so I was like, oh, maybe they can really find something during this. And I was, you know, excited, nervous, because I heard it is a little bit painful. It honestly wasn't too bad. It just felt like period cramping. But everything was clear. That was normal. And so now I'm even more frustrated because I'm like, there's literally nothing wrong with me. Why can't I get pregnant? Like, why can't we find something to fix? I know you don't want anything to be wrong with you, but when you're trying for so long and there's no explanation for it, it's really frustrating. So in June, I decided to take a second round of Clomid. He did want me to take the 50 milligrams again, just because he didn't want to give me too much, I guess. I don't really know. I took that and it didn't work again. And so I'm like, okay, so maybe Clomid's not the right drug for me. Maybe it doesn't work with my body, or maybe it's just not high enough. So that was in June, and then, you know, I got my period again in July, and I didn't take any more medication. I just kind of tried naturally. And then in August, I saw him again, and that was the 1 year mark since I've started seeing a doctor for this, and also a year and a half since we've started trying. And so I asked him, can we maybe up the dosage for the Clomid? And he says, yeah, we can do 100 milligrams this time. And at this point, since it's already been a year of me, you know, being seen by a doctor and it hasn't been helping, I was I wanted to know if he could give me a referral for a fertility specialist, someone who can maybe prescribe me a different medication, to do something else, kind of look further into what is going on with me. And he had absolutely no issue with doing that. He recommended me to the same clinic that we had the semen analysis at. And so he put the referral in for me, and I only had to wait about a month to get in. And I was expecting it to be a lot longer, so that was pretty exciting. So I went to go pick up my Clomid that he said he was going to give me the 100 milligrams. I pick it up from the pharmacy, and it's 50 milligrams again. So I still pick it up. I didn't realize it until I got home. So I called the office and I said I was supposed to get 100 milligrams and I was only sent over 50 if they could resend it. And I thought he was only going to send me 50 milligrams since I already had the 50 milligrams at home. But he ended up sending me 100 milligrams. And so I picked that up. And now at home, I have 150 milligrams. And so this probably wasn't the safest thing for me to do without a doctor's permission. But instead of taking the 100 milligrams, I skipped and completely just took the whole 150 milligrams on the cycle that I was waiting to see the fertility specialist. So when I finally got in to see the fertility specialist, this was September 2019, my ovulation tests were getting darker. I knew I was about to ovulate when I had my appointment, and she did do an ultrasound. She did a transvaginal ultrasound to look at everything. She wanted to look at my ovaries. She wanted to look at, just everything. And she says, oh, it looks like you're about to ovulate. And she measured my eggs and, she wanted to make sure my lining was thick enough. She wanted to make sure everything was good. I did tell her that I took 150 milligrams of Clomid that cycle. And she did tell me that not only was I about to ovulate, but I was about to ovulate 2 eggs. And so I was like, oh my gosh, if I get pregnant this cycle, how perfect would that be? We've been trying for almost 2 years now. If I get pregnant with twins, that would just be so perfect. And so I tried, honestly, that cycle, I tried so much harder. I felt like I wanted to get pregnant that cycle so much more than any cycle because I knew there was a possibility of me having twins, and I wanted that more than anything. I took an ovulation test 2 days after that appointment, and it was like a blazing positive ovulation test. It was so dark. I think it was dark like that for like 4 days. And so I couldn't really pinpoint the exact day I ovulated, so, So in this cycle in September, at about 6 DPO, I started testing like a crazy person. I took a test in the morning before work. So I have an hour lunch break. And so I usually come home and I have lunch at home. And so I would take a test on my lunch break. And then I would take a test when I got home from work. And I would take a test right before bed. And then obviously 6 DPO, everything was negative. I'm still taking just like the cheap Amazon tests. At 7 DPO in the morning, I wake up. It's like 6 in the morning. It's negative. I'm like, okay. I take it at lunch. I'm like, of course, it's negative. I come home. I take another one. And I'm thinking, of course, it's negative. And I look at it. And I could not believe my eyes. But it was positive. So I'm very lucky. I hadn't experienced a miscarriage or chemical pregnancy. So I, haven't been seeing positives and then having them go away. So when I saw this positive, this was the first positive I had seen in almost 2 years of trying. So I could not believe what I saw. I rushed to the bathroom and I grabbed a first response test that I had been saving, and I did that one, and it was like obviously there. It was a very faint line, but it was obviously there. I grabbed a digital first response test because I'm like, if I can obviously see this on this first response test, it's going to show up on the digital. And so I did. I took it on the digital at only 7 DPO, and it came back negative. It said no. I was a little bit disappointed about that, but I knew that was positive. I knew I was not making this line up. And so in the morning at 8 DPO, I took another first response test, and it was even darker. And so I took another first response digital, and it said yes. And I was so happy. So I took a clear blue digital test, and I know those ones require a lot more HCG to be in your body in order to show up. They're just more sensitive, I guess, or not as sensitive. And so I was expecting that one to say not pregnant, but it said pregnant. I was so happy. I couldn't contain myself. I had to go to work still. I never like to take a pregnancy test before I have to go to work because I'm not going to be able to contain myself. But I go to work, and then on my lunch, I call my fertility specialist, and I tell her I got a positive test, and she says, oh, that's great. Let's schedule some blood work. And so I got my blood work done, and my levels were, I believe they were 32. And I was only like 3 weeks pregnant at that time. And so that was pretty good. And so she had me do them again a couple days later. I think it was like 4 days later. And they were in like the 300 range. And she's like, that's very reassuring, you know, this looks great. And in my head, I had been doing a lot of research on twins because that was now in my head. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, it jumped from 32 to like over 300 in a couple of days. Like, I'm having twins. Like, I know I'm having twins. She told me she saw I was going to ovulate 2 eggs. I got pregnant on that cycle. I'm having twins. Like, I just knew it. And so at 6 weeks, I go in for an ultrasound at my fertility specialist just so she can see if everything is going okay. And she's looking around in there, and I'm like, is it twins? And she's looking, and she's like, no, I only see 1 baby. And so, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed that there wasn't twins in there just because I was so sure that there was. But I was so happy that there was one baby in there. But the baby looked great. Everything was perfect. It wasn't ectopic. The baby he was right where he was supposed to be. From there, you know, they say, okay, well, now that you're pregnant, you don't need to see the fertility specialist anymore. So go back to your OB. So then I went home and started doing research on midwives, and you can see everything that happened after this point in previous videos. So if you go back and look at my old videos, then you can see everything that has happened since then. So as I'm filming this video, I am 26 weeks pregnant with that little baby boy, and we are over the moon. It was a journey to get here, but it was obviously in our plan, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and also please subscribe so you don't miss any new videos that I post, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.